Hey, good morning. We're not riding at Tim's today, so I shooting a video for you on some word from God that he's been working me through and talking with me. So we'll go ahead and get into it then. What we're talking about is a misunderstanding. Is what my belief of it is, and that's that God wants you to surrender. Um, and people look at that in the wrong fashion. Uh, when they look at it for Christ. That's not what He's really calling you to do, and that's why men have such a hard time and women have such a hard time. I mean, ask a woman to surrender in marriage to her husband. They don't even like hearing the word submit, right? Because that surrender implies giving up, or that you lost, that you had no other choice. So we don't like to hear that word. Men don't like to hear that word either. We don't want to hear that we had to surrender. That means we weren't able to compete, right? The definition of surrender is to cease resistance to an enemy or opponent and submit to their authority. None of that sounds like anything any of us want to do, right? Uh, we don't want to stop resisting our enemies, uh, and we don't want to submit to their authority, right? Who would? Nobody does. Well, let's look at that two things there. And first of all, uh, our God is not your enemy, and He's not your opponent. All right, so that takes that part out. And as far as the submit to the authority, well, I mean, yeah, He has authority. It is His. But whether you submit to it or not, uh, that's not His ultimate goal. Is what I'm getting at. He's not looking for you to submit to His authority. All right. What and here's the other part. So a lot of times when we say we surrender to Christ, right? We try to work out a treaty with him, right? We'll say, oh, I'm going to surrender to you. I'm not going to do these things, whatever it is anymore, right? And in our treaty, we assume that God understands that because we're not going to do those things anymore, that his part of the deal is, or we expect his part of the deal to provide better for us in our lives on whatever it is we want, right? So whether it's fixing our marriage or fixing our finances or whatever, that's how that surrender comes. Or we surrender to God, or we surrender to Him, and give up drugs, and expect Him to fix it. Uh, part of that is where the issue comes in of why a commitment to Christ is more important. See, that's what God is looking for. He's looking for commitment. He's not looking for your surrender. He's looking for you to commit to Him. So when we surrender and things get good, it makes it easy to go back to doing other things that we shouldn't. It may not be the same thing, but a lot of times we find something else. And that's why we fall off of being committed to Him, is because we're just keeping up that original, what we thought was our agree, and not doing whatever it was we were supposed to do, but we end up doing something different. So, uh, what He's looking for is commitment. And we see that here in Psalms 37:5. It says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. See, that commitment is what He's looking for. He wants to be committed. Again, in Proverbs 16:3, uh, we see, commit your activities to the Lord, and your plans will be achieved. So He's talking about God wants commitment. He wants people that are willing to commit to His kingdom, to commit their life to being great at being Christians. All right, He's looking for uh, loyalty people, and we see that here in Hosea in 6:6. It says, For I desire loyalty and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." So, God wants, obviously, he wants strong, powerful men working for him. He wants them committed to him. He doesn't want people that surrendered or gave up. I mean, he loves us all, so but he's not asking you to give up on being you to be a part of his kingdom. What he's asking for you is for you to be you and to commit to being the best you can be for the kingdom, not surrendering and becoming something you are not because feel you have no other choice. Here's the ultimate problem with surrendering. When you surrender, okay, and you submit to that surrender, ultimately, if you see an opportunity to leave and go back to being what you were and still being prosperous, you will. So when you surrender, you constantly you take and you follow the rules of the surrender so that life will be good. But if you find an opportunity to get out of that oppression from your enemy, then you'll leave. And if you think you can leave and go somewhere else and survive away from that enemy, that's what you'll do. And that's what happens when a lot of people surrender to Christ. They surrender, but they never commit. He wants you to commit. So go ahead, change your life, make a commitment. And I'll put this in there. That's part of what tithing is, okay? He said, I don't need your burnt offerings. Christ doesn't need what you have. He gave it to you. He doesn't need it. Your money he doesn't need. Your food he doesn't need. He can supply for himself. He doesn't need you to give to him. What that tithing is doing is showing your commitment, okay? And so commit to tithing. Start out small. Listen, don't try to change your commitment level from 0 to 100%. You'll fail. It's like everybody that decides to go on a diet in the beginning of the year. I mean, they overnight decide they're going to change their whole life, their whole way of eating. They commit to that, and then they fail because the commitment was too great. Instead, start out with small commitments and start changing life slowly. So find an organization out there. Hey, listen, a bunch of you guys are motocross guys. There's MXers for Jesus. There's Team Faith. There's FCA Motocross. All right. And my favorite, I'll give a shout out to my buddy Hudson Smith that does FCA Motocross. All right. All these teams could use your commitment. And I'm not saying you have to commit a whole bunch, but listen, if you committed just $2 a week, all right, that would help out those teams a whole bunch. If the 100 and something people that watch this commit to that, boy, we could make a difference every week in the lives of these guys going out there that have committed their lives to Christ. I mean, they've sold houses to follow and be a part of Christ. They've given up jobs that paid more to follow what they've committed to Christ to do. And so, hey, maybe your little tale is doing a small amount to help every week. Like I said, don't tithe a huge amount. Just start small. Start changing your commitment a little bit at a time to Christ to increase and become better. Spend just a little bit more time in the Bible. Spend just a little bit more time getting to church. Spend a little bit more money helping others. You can find a way to make yourself better in the eyes of Christ. And the greatest thing about commitment, right, is so when you surrender to somebody and then you try to escape or whatever, right, from that surrender, get out of that treaty, they feel betrayed because usually generally involves hurting somebody when you go against that, submitting to that surrender, right? But when you commit to something, you can change how committed you are to it. Now, don't get me wrong. Christ wants to see you completely committed as deeply as you can. But here's the thing. When your commitment level changes and goes lower because you're having a hard time in life or things aren't going right, all right, he's not going to stop loving you. He doesn't feel that you betrayed him. He just sees that you're in a low valley, okay? And you can redirect that commitment without a problem, okay? So when people say, you betrayed me, they get angry. That hurts people, right? To be betrayed in the surrender in a treaty, right? But they're okay with just saying, hey, you're not as committed anymore, right? So it makes it easier on you. It makes it easier to try to live the life of a Christian if you understand when you give your life to Christ, you're committing your life to Him. You've committed to His kingdom and His way. Don't think of it as a surrender. Think of it as a commitment and going forward, and try to work to become better at that commitment, to fulfill that commitment on a greater level all the time. And just know that while you're committed, you can do what you enjoy, the things you enjoy. Obviously that you're going to look in the Bible and there's certain things that we shouldn't do that we're told not to do, but for the majority, if you're a motocross guy, you can still do motocross and enjoy being committed to Christ. It just means that, like anything else, when you commit to something, you end up sacrificing some other things. Okay, you give up some other things. I shouldn't say sacrifice, but you give up some other things so that you can spend more time working on and building the skill that you've committed to. So, if being a great Christian is what you're committed to, ultimately you're going to give up some things that take up time away from being that great Christian. So, I thank you guys. I'll be praying for you. I look forward to seeing you back at Tim's as soon as the track opens again. I know he had some equipment breaking down, so if you think about Tim this week, pray for him. Obviously, pray for all our track owners out there. Owning a track's not easy. It costs a lot of money, and diesel prices are not getting any cheaper, and big heavy equipment's not getting any cheaper either. So we pray for them, and thank you guys. I pray for all of you that watch and view, and I'm praying for the riders that I don't know, haven't watched, haven't viewed, haven't met, but I'm praying for you guys. Have a blessed day. Thanks.